Cryo Curse, the Unsealed Past. I'd been on the station for 6 months when we found it. By then, I had adjusted to the routines of life in space, the constant hum of the ventilation system, the way liquids moved in odd globules instead of streams, and the eerie stillness of the stars beyond the station's windows. We were a small crew, 5 of us, each with our own specialized tasks. It was a tight-knit group, not prone to drama or surprises. So when I found the chamber, the first emotion I felt was confusion. It was during a routine inspection of the storage bay, a tedious task meant to catalogue our remaining supplies and ensure everything was in its place. The station was designed for efficiency, with every square inch accounted for, every item meticulously logged. So when my scanner detected a hollow space behind one of the walls, I thought it was an error. There wasn't supposed to be anything there. "Hey Jenkins, can you come check this out?" I called over the comms, trying to keep my voice steady. Jenkins, the station's engineer, was a calm and methodical man. He floated over within minutes, his brow furrowed as he examined the readings on my scanner. "That's strange," he muttered, more to himself than to me. "There's nothing in the blueprints about a compartment here." He pressed a few buttons on his wrist pad, and the wall panel hissed open, revealing a small, sealed chamber inside. It looked like a cryopod, the kind used to transport delicate specimens, or, in some cases, people. But it was old, much older than anything on this station. Dust, actual dust, which was nearly impossible to find in a controlled environment like this, coated the exterior. "Must be from a previous mission," I suggested, though even as I said it, the idea felt wrong. The station had been operational for only a few years, and everything on it was new, state-of-the-art. Jenkins didn't reply. He reached out, running his fingers over the pod's surface until he found the manual release latch. With a soft click, the chamber opened, releasing a puff of cold, stale air. Inside, a body lay perfectly preserved, encased in ice. It was a woman, her features calm and serene, as if she were simply sleeping. "Who the hell is this?" Jenkins whispered, taking a step back. I stared at the face behind the frosted glass. There was no name tag, no identification of any kind. Just a woman, frozen in time, with no explanation. Word of our discovery spread quickly through the station. Captain Reynolds called a meeting in the main module, his expression unreadable as we all gathered around the table. "This pod isn't listed in any of our records," he began, his voice tight. "I've contacted ground control, and they have no information on it either." "How is that possible?" asked Dr. Elara, the station's medical officer. She was the most level-headed among us, never one to give in to speculation. But now, even she looked uneasy. Reynolds shook his head. "I don't know. But until we figure this out, I want that chamber sealed off. No one is to touch it until we get further instructions." "But what about the body?" I asked. "We can't just leave her there." "We don't have a choice," Reynolds replied. "Not until we know what we're dealing with." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the peaceful expression, the pale skin tinged blue from the cold. Who was she? How had she ended up here, in a forgotten corner of the station, with no one to remember her? The nightmares started the next day. I dreamed of the woman, but she wasn't frozen anymore. She was alive, her eyes wide open, staring at me with an intensity that burned through my skull. She didn't speak, but I could hear her voice in my head, a whisper that grew louder until it became a scream. "Help me! Help me!" I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. But the worst part was that even after I woke, I could still hear the voice, faint but persistent, "Help me," echoing in the back of my mind. "Help me." I tried to shake it off, to focus on my work, but it lingered, a shadow that wouldn't leave. I wasn't the only one. Over the next few days, the atmosphere on the station grew tense. Jenkins became irritable, snapping at anyone who came near him. Dr. Alara reported hearing strange noises, soft whispers, the sound of footsteps in empty corridors. Even Captain Reynolds, usually so composed, started losing his temper over trivial things. And then there were the visions. It started with flickers at the edge of my vision, quick flashes of movement that disappeared when I turned my head. But soon they became more frequent, more vivid. I saw her, the woman from the pod, walking through the station, her feet barely touching the ground. Her eyes were dark, empty voids, and her mouth moved as if she were trying to speak. But no sound came out. One night, I woke to find her standing over my bed, her cold breath brushing against my face. I froze, too terrified to move, until she slowly backed away, disappearing into the shadows. When I finally found the courage to turn on the light, there was nothing there. But the frost on the walls and the icy chill in the air told me that it hadn't been a dream. By the end of the week, we were all on edge. Reynolds ordered another scan of the station, trying to find any clues as to where the chamber had come from. But the results only deepened the mystery. The pod was made from materials that didn't match any known manufacturer, and its design was unlike anything we'd ever seen. That's when Jenkins made the mistake of opening it again. I was on the other side of the station when it happened, but I heard the scream through the comms, a high-pitched, gut-wrenching sound that made my blood run cold. By the time I reached the storage bay, Jenkins was already dead. His body lay crumpled on the floor, his face twisted in an expression of pure terror. The pod was empty. "We need to get off this station," I said, my voice shaking. "We need to leave now." "We can't," Reynolds replied, though his voice wavered. "We're not authorized to abandon the mission." "To hell with the mission!" I shouted, my fear boiling over into anger. "That thing is loose on the station. You saw what it did to Jenkins." Reynolds looked around at the rest of the crew, his resolve crumbling. "Prepare the escape pod," he finally ordered. "We're getting out of here." But as we made our way to the pod, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the station into darkness. In the pitch black, I could hear the whispers again, growing louder, more frantic. And then, just as the emergency lights flickered on, I saw her. She was standing in the corridor ahead, her empty eyes fixed on us. Her mouth opened, and this time, I could hear her voice, a cold, hollow sound that sent a shiver down my spine. "Help me!" We turned and ran, but the corridors seemed to stretch on forever, twisting and turning in impossible ways. The whispers followed us, growing louder until they were all I could hear, drowning out everything else. I didn't know how long we ran, only that by the time we reached the escape pod, only 3 of us were left, me, Reynolds, and Dr. Alara. As we strapped in, I caught one last glimpse of the station through the viewport. She was there, staring at us, her face pressed against the glass. And as the pod launched, carrying us away from that cursed place, I heard her voice one last time, a whisper that would haunt me for the rest of my life. "You can't escape, not from me." The station vanished into the darkness, but I knew, deep down, that she was still with us. And no matter where we went, she would find us. She always would.